In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to solve polynomial equations. Okay, so I have a procedure in place that we're going to use to solve this. Okay, so let's take a look at step 1. So step 1 is to move all terms and set the equation equals to 0. So we have to move everything to one side and make the other side come out to 0. Okay, so what we can do here is get rid of the 3x squared. Okay, so if I want to make this come out to 0, I would have to minus 3x squared. So if I minus 3x squared to the right, I have to minus 3x squared to the left. Here's the x squared term, so you have to line up the negative 3x squared with the negative 7x squared so that you can collect those like terms. Okay, so bring down the 4x to the third. And then negative 7 minus 3 is going to be negative 10, and then x squared. And then this whole thing comes out to 0. Okay, so that is step number 1. Step 2 is to factor the polynomial completely. So we're going to solve this by factoring. What we have to do at the beginning when factoring any polynomials is to look for greatest common factor. Okay, so 4 and 10, we can pull a 2 out because 2 is the biggest number that can go into 4 and 10. So 2, and then pull out an x squared. Okay, so 2x squared is going to be your greatest common factor. And then 4x cubed divided by 2x squared. Okay, it's going to be 2x. And then 10x squared divided by 2x squared is going to be 5. And then equals to 0. Okay, so that is step number 2, is to factor everything completely. And then step 3 is to set each factor equals to 0 and then solve for x. Okay, so we're going to set each factor. So here's a factor. So 2x squared equals to 0. And then the other one is 2x take away 5 equals to 0. And then we're going to solve each one for x. And that's how you find out your x. So solve for x here, we have to divide by 2. So we have x squared is 0. And then take square root of it. So square root of x squared. Square root of 0. So x is just going to be 0. So this is one of the roots. And then over here, to solve for x, we would have to add 5 to get rid of the minus 5. Bring down the 2x. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. And then 0 plus 5 is 5. Divide by 2. So x is 5 over 2. Okay, so your two roots are, your two solutions, 0 and then 5 over 2. Let's take a look at another one. We're going to solve this by factoring. So first thing we have to do is move all terms to one side and set the equation equals to 0. If you look at the equation, you have 0 on the right hand side. Okay, see how this is a 0. Therefore, there is nothing to get rid of. So you do not have to do step 1. It's done. Step 2 is to factor the polynomial completely. Okay, so first thing we have to do is look for greatest common factor. 5 and 80. Okay, so 5. And then between x to the 5th and x, you can pull out an x. So 5x is your greatest common factor. And then you're left with x to the 4th. Take away 5 goes into 80 16 times, and then equals to 0. Okay, so here you have x to the 4th, take away 16. So this is a difference of two perfect squares. Because x to the 4th is a perfect square, and then 16 is also a perfect square. You can factor x to the 4th minus 16 into x squared plus 4, x squared take away 4, and then equals to 0. And then here, don't forget to bring down the 5x. And then down here, we have x squared take away 4. It's another difference of two perfect square. So we're going to have to factor that. So let's bring down the 5x, x squared plus 4. And then x squared minus 4 can be factored into x plus 2 times x minus 2. And then that equals to 0. Step 3 is to set each one equals to 0 and then solve for x. Okay, so we have 5x equals to 0. X squared plus 4 equals to 0. X plus 2 equals to 0. And then x minus 2 equals to 0. So to solve for x here, you divide by 5. So x is 0. And then here you take away 4. So minus 4 minus 4. So you have x squared equals to negative 4. And then to go from x squared to x, you have to take the square root of it. So square root of x squared, square root of negative 4. So x is plus or minus 2i. And then here, take away 2, take away 2. So x is negative 2. And then here, plus 2, plus 2. So x equals to 2. So we have x equals to 0 plus or minus 2i, and then plus or minus 2. Okay, let's take a look at another one here. Solve this polynomial. Okay, let's take a look at the procedure. So step 1 is to move all terms to one side and then set the equation equals to 0. So we have to get rid of the 4x squared. Do the opposite, so we would have to minus 4x squared. If you do it to the right, you got to do it to the left hand side, minus 4x squared. Okay, bring down 8x to the 5th. Then 5x squared take away 4x squared is going to be 1x squared. So that's just going to be x squared. And then these add up to 0. So step 1 is to get all of the terms on one side of the equal sign. And then step 2 is to factor the polynomial completely. So it looks like we can pull out an x squared. X squared is the greatest common factor. And then you have 8x cubed plus 1 equals to 0. Inside the parenthesis, we have sum of two perfect cubes. So we're going to bring down the x squared. So we take cube root of 8x to the 3rd. We're going to get 2x. And then if we cube it, we get back 8x to the 3rd. Okay, so we rewrite 8x to the 3rd as that. And then cube root of 1 is 1. And then 1 cubed is 1. So we rewrite 8x to the 3rd power plus 1 in terms of this, so you can see what a is and what b is, so we can plug it into the to the formula. So here we have x squared. So this is going to be the a, and then this is going to be your b. So it's going to be a plus b because it's plus. So a plus b is going to be 2x plus 1. And then a squared, or 2x squared, is 4x squared minus ab, 2x times 1 is 2x, and plus b squared, well, that's just going to be 1, equals to 0. Okay, so we factor it completely. It has 3 factors. And the last thing we have to do is set each factor equals to 0 and then solve for x. So we have 3 factors that we need to set it equals to 0 and then solve for it. So the first one is x squared equals to 0. So that x is just going to be 0. Okay, the second one is 2x plus 1 equals to 0. So when you solve it, take away 1, divide by 2, take away 1, divide by 2, so you get negative 1/2. And then the other one is 4x squared, take away 2x plus 1 equals to 0. Now this is a quadratic equation. I'm going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula to solve this. So to find x is going to be opposite of b, so that's going to be 2 plus or minus square root of b squared. So that's going to be negative 2 squared. Take away 4 times a is 4, c is 1. And we divide the whole thing by 2a. So that's going to be 2 times 4. And then x is 2 plus or minus square root of 4. Here you have minus 16. And then all over 8. So continue, we have x equals to 2 plus or minus square root of negative 12 all over 8. And then we have to simplify square root of negative 12. Okay, so we break this up into square root of negative 4, square root of 3. And then square root of negative 4 is going to be 2i. And then square root of 3 stays the same. X is 2 plus or minus 2i square root of 3 all over 8. 2 can go into all of those numbers, so the final answer is going to be 1 plus or minus I square root of 3 all over 4. So we have x equals to 0. We have negative 1/2. And then we have 1 plus or minus I square root of 3. That whole thing over 4. Okay, so those are the roots. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So we're going to solve this equation right here. 16x cubed is 54. Okay, so step 1 is to move all terms to one side and then set the equations equals to 0. So we have to get rid of the 54 so we can have 0 on the right hand side. So how do I get rid of the 54? Well, I would do the opposite, and that is to minus 54. Okay, and then I would minus 54 to this side. Okay, so here I have 16x cubed, take away 54 equals to 0. So that's the first thing you have to do. Get everything on one side and then have the other side equals to 0. Okay, so step 2 is to factor the polynomial completely. We're going to factor the 16x cubed minus 54. 2 is your greatest common factor, so I pull a 2 out. I have 8x cubed, take away 27, and that's going to equals to 0. And then inside, so here I have, looks like I have a difference of two perfect cubes. So if I take cube root of this, I'll get 2x. Okay, if I cube it, I'll get that. And then cube root of 27 is going to be 3, and then 3 cubed is 27. And then bring down the 2. And then that whole thing equals to 0. Letting 2x become an a, and then the 3 is the b. So I'm just going to plug those into the factor form of a cubed minus b cubed. Okay, so a cubed take away b cubed. So the factor form of this is going to be a minus b, and then a squared plus ab plus b squared. So here we have 2. A minus b is going to be 2x minus 3. And then a squared, 2x squared is 4x squared plus ab, so that's going to be 6x, plus b squared, so that's going to be 9. And then, okay, and then that equals to 0. All right, so that is step 2, is to factor the polynomial completely. Nothing else we can do to these factors. So we are done factoring. And then the last thing we have to do is set each factor equals to 0 and then solve for it. Okay, this one has no variable, so I don't need to set this equals to 0. So I have 2x minus 3 equals to 0. And then solve, I'll get 3 over 2. And then here I would have to use the quadratic formula to solve it. To find x, I would do opposite of b, so negative 6 plus or minus 6 squared, take away 4 ac, and that whole thing over 2a, so 2 times 4. Okay, so x is negative 6 plus or minus 6 squared is 36, take away, okay, so here negative 4 times 4 is negative 16, times 9 is 144, and then that whole thing is going to be all over 8. Okay, so continue here. We have x is negative 6 plus or minus square root of negative 108 all over 8. Now you have to simplify square root of 108. We have to simplify this. So we're going to break this up into square root of negative 36, and then here's square root of 3. X is negative 6 plus or minus, so here is going to give you 6i times square root of 3, and then that whole thing over 8. Okay, so we can reduce this by 2. 2 is the greatest common factor for those numbers, so it'll be negative 3 plus or minus 3i times square root of 3 all over 4. 3 over 2, and then the other one is negative 3 plus or minus 3i square root of 3 all over 4. Okay, so these are your roots.